Wow, thank you, Caroline. Thank you so much for the kind introduction and the honor to be on your floor. I hope that you see a slide in the back of me, which is basically the summary on what I believe the future of healthcare would look like. And if you have to remember one slide, it's this one. This is a Wi-Fi wall at the beach in Peru. And only in the shadow you get Wi-Fi. This is digital, mobile, it's fun, it's nicely designed, and it prevents me from getting skin cancer, right? So could we build a world in which health is standard, is the default? And that is what I'm going to try to take you through. Sometimes people call me a futurist. I don't like that because I cannot predict the future. Really, no one can. And Bill Gates once said, we always overestimate what is going to happen between 2 and 5 years from now, and we underestimate what is going to happen in 10 years from now. So prediction hard, but creating the future, I think we can do. And I firmly believe that Kelly has the power to find people who fit in that new world and which will become basically the people building what I'm going to talk about today, the transition from Sickcare to healthcare. Now, a very easy way to get inspired is looking to sci-fi, to science fiction movies. This is WALL-E. You might have seen WALL-E. WALL-E was a small, tiny robot who serves people which live a pretty sedentary life, just drink sodas, and basically look Netflix. That's no longer science fiction. I mean, we have reached that future, and that is what you see here. This is a real-life person looking to VR, drinking a soda, and so on and so on. And you might argue, well, why not? Because that's also a future, which could be a possibility. And even for that future is a solution. This guy, what you see there, he will get diabetes. And he will get blind, and his kidneys will fail. That is what is happening with every diabetic patient. But look to this. These are the very first kidneys which are not basically biological. They are printed by a 3D printer. And currently in China, the first mice are running around which do contain these artificial 3D printed kidneys. So you could argue, well, maybe in the future we're going to have, well, replacement organs. Just like we have a tire which breaks, we replace the tire and life goes on. But I don't think that is the future you're looking forward to. A future where kind of this is what is coming ahead of us. So I'm going to take you to a different future. A future where I think that the excitement of life is driven by indeed new technology, new science, new design ideas, new business models, which make us more human, but which allow us to die young, but as late as possible. That is the big dream. The day before you die, you still want to be super healthy. That's what we're going to try to build. Now, as Caroline said, I'll try to introduce myself first. Because why do I even think that we can do these things? And this is a little bit me in the background. I'm one of these nerds, now they call it geeks, but I'm one of these nerds who have been reading every single book in the library of the city where I was born. Every single book. And basically, I was raised with two things. First, with computers. My father was a system analyst, and he was the first who brought that was called an Apple II computer to Belgium. He basically smuggled it into Belgium. So I learned as a young guy to type in DOS and in Pascal and in Fortran on a black screen with green letters. And I can never tell my children that they game too much, because I did that myself as well. In my time, there was no graphical games, and it was word games. And the most famous one was Zork. And Zork was basically a screen, black screen, and it said, you see a forest. And then you could type walk forest north. And then the computer said, you see a cabin. And then you could say walk cabin. You see a door, open door, you see a rift, open rift, and you could move into the cabin under the ground, and all of a sudden you came in a world with trolls and monsters and elves. That is where I spent the time of my early life, in fantasy worlds. And at the other side of the equation, my grandfather, my first grandfather, he was a graphic designer. And a graphic designer, he made ads. And for instance, one of the ads he made is this one. He made this ad for Coca-Cola. I think you can see it here. The title of the ad, it says, delightful. And delightful is something I'm going to use again the next half an hour to explain why I believe that even healthcare will become delightful. And then my other grandfather, he was a painter. He made art, like the one you see at the bottom. Kun je even some switchen? But nevertheless, when I started my studies, I'm a biomedic by training, I'm a molecular oncologist by training. I never used art and design and computers in my life. I spent my first years elucidating the biology of a number of cancers. And bear with me, that's the only nasty picture I'm going to show. This was a Swedish farmer who lived in the north of the country till the problem he had became too large. He had almost an extra head, a twin head if you like. This was a salivary tumor which was taken away. The guy was perfectly okay. But the question is, why do you wait so long? And could you have anticipated these things? And after my kind of academic career, where we elucidated the biology of cancer, I spent some time in biotech, founded 2 companies, and the last thing I did in my conventional career was developing a drug to treat brain cancer in children. More confronting than a 6-year-old child with brain cancer, it will probably never get. These children didn't smoke too much, didn't get too much stress. There was something which we couldn't solve, which we didn't understand, which we just tried to treat a bit. And in all honesty, the best thing we could do is send these kids on a camp. And that camp was also called Camp Delight. And that was my background career, biomedic and science and biotech and life science and pharma. And then my life changed completely, somewhere early the 10th, 11th, 12th. When I went to China for the first time and learned to know a system more than 2,200 years old, where in some parts of China, the doctor got paid as long as people in the village remained healthy. I'm going to repeat that. The doctor got paid to keep people healthy. And once you got sick, you no longer had to pay. How cool is that? And that is really what struck me. Because we lost that completely. And really, we lost it completely. We don't have preventive health, we have curative health. For every 100 euro you spend to Sickcare, we spent 90 euros to the last 2 years of our life. And we spent less than €1 to prevention. And I think that is going to change. And in 2014, I wrote a book on that. The book was called Sick No More, Nooit meer ziek. And when the book came out, I thought, well, I've done my job. Because I had written down why I believed we had lost the Chinese system. And I gave a roadmap using digital tools, design, art, trying to build that future or that past again. And when the book came out, a lot of people said, well, wow, fascinating story. You can come and tell it on TV, on the radio. And even pharma companies and life science companies said, well, Mr. Kas, you can come and talk. And option 1 would have been that they said, well, Mr. Kas, that's a stupid idea. It's not going to happen. And by the way, we make money of people being sick. We don't want to hear your future, right? But nevertheless, there's 2 reasons why people listened. First reason might be that I knew the domain. I mean, I came out of life sciences, if you like, right? But reason number 1, big reason number 1 is Kodak. You might still be called Kodak. Kodak, the global company of analog photography. I think a number of you have used a Kodak camera, which they get for their kind of first communion. And Kodak, basically, by the way, Kodak was the first company on the planet with a digital camera. That's something hardly anyone knows. But after 3 months, no one was buying a digital camera. This was 2009, 2005, 2006. And Kodak said, let's hide the camera. Put it in the closet. And 5 years later, Kodak was gone. Because everybody switched from analog to digital photography. That's not something you want to encounter. And that's the first thing people used as a reason to listen. In life sciences, you do not want to encounter the Kodak moment, right? That's one. Now, just to make one thing sure and clear, I'm not saying that we're going to live forever. Dying, by the way, is the best invention ever. Dying makes you strive to something. If you would live forever, you would delay things. Don't do that. Do them tonight. Don't procrastinate, right? And let me try to explain that better. Imagine I try to sell you a watch, a wearable, which tells you the number of days you still have to live. Is there anyone interested? I don't see your reactions now, but I don't think so. But imagine I sell you this watch, a watch which allows you to do something in your lifestyle and your environment, which enables to stop the number going down, keeps the number stable, or brings the number even up. Is that something you would love to use? I think so. Because the day before you die, you still want to be happy. And that's what I mentioned earlier. And that is the world we're going to try to build. A world where quality of life remains till, indeed, end of life. Right? And so far, I have met no one who is against this kind of vision. Right. Now I mentioned two things. Which help people to listen and to believe to what came next. The first one, the Kodak moment. The second was this. If you look to slides in the back of me, and you see here, I guess it's a shark, you might argue that is horrifying, that's scary, right? But if you see to this slide, that's even more horrifying because you do not see what is coming. So not knowing what comes, concern. And you might recall 9/11. At 9/11, this guy, Donald Rumsfeld, was Minister of Defense in the States. And he made a very famous quote at that point, where he said, we, FBI, CIA, we know what we know, sure. We also know what we don't know. We know that Bin Laden is hiding somewhere, but we don't know where, right? And then he said something remarkable. He said, our biggest threats to unity are the things we don't know, the unknown unknowns. And that's a fascinating term. Something where you don't know that if you don't know it can help you to bring delight. Look to this. This is my birthday wish list in yellowish. If you give me a present on my bucket list, I'm happy, right? But if you give me a present which is here, which is something I even didn't realize exists, I'm super happy. And that is exactly what we started to use as a concept to help companies change, to show them what they didn't know, and to use that to give something to their customer, to their patient, but also to their partner, to their children, to their father, and to their mother, so that you became recognized not for your digital whatever tool, not for your design ID, but because you always gave me, I didn't expect to get from you, and that's why I come back to you. So how would Kelly Delight look like? How would Pharma X Delight look like? How would Life Science Company Delight look like? And that is exactly what I would like to take you through in the next, well, half an hour, 40 minutes. One of the key things to start bringing delight to people is to get frictions out of the way. Remove a friction. This is an example of a serious friction. Look, what this device does, it sees my veins. And it simply tells my nurse or my doctor where the veins are. And basically, I cannot miss if I put a needle in your arm. This all of a sudden helps a patient to feel trust and feel okay on what is going to happen. It's a friction out of the way. One example. Let me give you a second example. You know Uber. Well, Uber is existing in Brussels. In a lot of places we don't have Uber yet. But Uber was doing something interesting a while ago. They said, we have one campaign for one day where we can order a nurse, not a car, but a nurse, which comes to my home and basically brings my flu injection at home. And in a few months it will be a COVID injection. But that was initially, it was kind of an ad campaign. It was so successful that Uber now has a service called Uberhealth, which is basically part of the Uber app. You see it at the right bottom, which is now to be used for bringing clinical services to my home. So I don't have to go to a clinic per se. I'll come back to that. I don't have to go to a doctor per se, to a nurse. What if the nurse comes to me? can I start to use frictions out of a healthcare system by bringing companies like Uber or companies like UPS into the picture? UPS, for instance, is looking for life sciences people. UPS is able to bring drugs to medication to its clients. And they're allowed to have someone in the car who can take a blood sample. So imagine, I get my samples, my drugs via Uber, I give a blood sample via UPS, goes back to the clinical lab. All of a sudden, UPS becomes a health company. I get a new service as a life science company to get access to my patient in his home. The supply chain needs novel type of people, novel kinds of jobs. Now also to make one thing clear, digital technology or Delight is not just about digital technology. Delight enables it, right? This is also Delight, but a different kind. I think you know what this is. This is Wally. And I don't let you look for it, but Wally is here, right? You have to find him basically in the background of things. This kind of thing, you have seen him, was the inspiration for a little child in a dentist's chair to make new kind of lamps, which are Wally lamps. And while he sits in the chair, he sees to the ceiling, and basically the dentist brings comfort to his patients, reduces the friction of fear, and makes it more delightful. You can now replace the ceiling with a Netflix screen as well, right? But these still, you could argue, are kind of gimmicks. Well, it's nice, but it's still not healthcare, really healthcare, right? This might come a step closer. This is a hospital in Clermont-Ferrand in France. And this hospital treats especially cancer patients, end-stage cancer patients. But what they have is a wine list and a wine bar, just like in a 2-star restaurant. And people go there realizing it might be my end of life, but my quality of life will be tremendous. So it's not because I will die once that you don't have to give me kind of a service, an experience which I will still remember. So let's start to bring it a little bit closer. I mentioned already bringing things home. And you've seen that big companies like Apple and Facebook even and Amazon and Google all start to mention that they are moving into health. The Apple Watch, the Google Watch, and so on and so on. Amazon has a watch now as well. Well, a wearable, it's called Halo. But this is Amazon. Amazon, first company they acquired when they said we're going to do something serious in health, is PillPack. And PillPack is a company which in the morning comes and knocks my door and brings the drugs I have to take. I'm 65 years old. I brings the 5 drugs I need in a small pack, delivers till I take them. At 1 o'clock they knock again, bring me the drugs I need in a small package, all set, and at 8 o'clock again. So they start to bring pharmacy home. They look that I become adherent and basically tackle one of the big problems in Sickcare. That's people not taking medication, right? But still, it's Sickcare, but reduced with the friction. So this is next generation. This is Proteus. Proteus has made the first way to make pills digital. And basically, this is a classical pill to treat a cardiovascular disease or treat a psychosis. But inside the pill is a small radio sensor. And I swallow the pill, and my stomach acid releases the radio sensor. The radio sensor sends a signal to a patch on my skin, to that patch on my skin, and that patch sends a message to my son that he took his medication at 5, or didn't. And all of a sudden, my medication gets smart, and my digital interaction with a super smartphone allows my network, my friends, my family to take care for me in a remote fashion, right? But still Sickcare, but digitized, less friction. So let's start to move into where we really aim to go. I will get old. Once I get old, I forget to drink. Hard to imagine, but the brain forgets to drink in time once you reach a certain age, 78, 80 plus. So we came up together with a Japanese company with a patch which sticks to my skin and measures dehydration. Good? Not good enough. Because if I cannot remember to drink, how can I interpret a patch? Well, the solution we came is what you see here at the bottom. These are simple water bottles. And the screw cap we can 3D print. And in the screw cap on top of the bottle is a small flag. The bottle of water stands on my table in my room, in my service flat, and ploops, all of a sudden the flag comes out. It's time to drink. And that is something I cannot forget. That is healthcare by default. All of a sudden, I have made, using technology and design, a tool in the real world of my not patient yet, and allows her or him to drink in time and to prevent dehydration. That is requiring quite a number of people, which are not just life sciences people, which requires engineers, which requires designers, right? Which requires architects, which requires retail people to get this into a retailer or on top of a retailer. So you start to see already that this brings completely novel jobs into the picture, entering healthcare. And we can go one step further. This is Japan, not yet usable in Europe. In Japan, we fly in with a drone into a service flat of elderly people, and on the drone is a glass of water. I cannot forget to drink if that happens. That is healthcare by default. It happens, I don't have to think. It occurs for me, right? Talking about robots, by the way, can you switch the slide? Everybody of everywhere on the planet, people want to stay home as long as possible, right? Except in Japan. In Japan, people are okay to die in the hospital, even in Corona times, to die in the hospital. And you know why? Japan is the most robotized country, but Japan has too little doctors and way too little nurses for a population which gets elder and elder. It's really aging. It's going to happen in Europe as well. Aging makes that we need kind of people to take care for us. In Japan, in my hospital, I have this robot. This is Robeer. Robeer is a nurse robot. Looks like a bear, can get me out of bed, into a bath, into a wheelchair, and people love it. Because they rather want to have a companion, a digital one, than being alone, isolated, with no one to talk to. I think in Corona times you already see where this might head. Because one of the biggest issues during Corona times is the complete damage of emotion and mental health because of being isolated and being alone. And this is a Next Step clinic. This is an amazing clinic in St. Louis, in Missouri. It's called Mercy Virtual. And at the outside, it looks like every hospital you know. But at the inside is not a single bed, not a single patient. 600 patients are monitored by 6 screens a patient by nurses and doctors, real nurses. But the patient remains at home. And technology is there to really look for the patients. And nevertheless, this is not about technology. This is about trust. The key thing which happened here is that the hospital allowed the doctors who are still in charge to build trust that technology made them better. Not replacing them, made them better. Better for the patients, better for basically the system. And this way, we're going to try to see technology entering our life and basically making us more human rather than replacing us. Different levels. This is the door in my hospital. And once I go to the door, I basically, the bar handle recognizes my hands and it sanitizes on my hands. No one has to remind me that I have to wash my hands, or basically that I have to kind of decontaminate. The hospital does it for me. It's automated, digitized, easy. Again, not always digital. This is also critical. This is a man's cave in a hospital in Harlem, in New York. And basically, this is designed like really a man's cave. And you see all my sports attributes. And it's built trying to get the patient to the doctor to get colon cancer or prostate preventive care. Normally, that's something where men say, well, I don't want to go to a hospital therefore. This might be a reason for me to say, well, maybe I should consider going there, because the experience is pretty cool. The experience is delightful. And so you will start to see kind of a balance between low-tech experiences, high-tech machines. Let me give you this example. I don't know whether you have already in-house one of these Google Homes or Alexa, Amazon Alexa's loudspeakers. These are loudspeakers you talk to. And basically what they do, they search. You can ask, when does my meeting start tomorrow? What is the temperature in Barcelona when I go there? How many people do we have in hospitals due to Corona? Who was the second president of whatever? I gave it to my father. And I used that to tell my father that it's time to take your medication. He didn't like that. Because he said, I don't like that computer voice, that Siri voice. So what we did, we looked for a piece of technology, Lyrebird, which allows you to talk to your computer for 2 minutes. And after 2 minutes, you can talk to your computer and you can type to your computer. And what you type gets pronounced with your voice. So we combine that on this loudspeaker. And now, at 5 o'clock, my father hears me say, Daddy, it's time to take your medication. And he loved that, big time. I cannot always be there physically or with video, but all of a sudden, he interferes with me like it's me. My voice, my human, right? And that's kind of the doctor's version. This is the first device which I use as a doctor. And you come as a patient with me, and all the things we talk about is recorded into the patient dossier. So the doctor can spend 10 times with you face to face, rather than your doctor who currently spends 5 minutes barely typing, even not watching you, right? Which doctor do you like? I think the first one, who uses technology to be more human. Okay. Now, if I would stop here, the only thing I've mentioned is that the digital revolution, which is entering healthcare, is there to start to be able to make the experience of the patient better, to get frictions out of the way, and the biggest friction in healthcare is getting sick. So how cool and how will it look like to use digital to get sickness now out of the way and to start moving to healthcare? And that is the path I would like to take you on. Mentioning a number of new jobs we're going to need to get there. Mentioning a number of things which are really already available or just at the horizon to be implemented, but not science fiction. Nothing you're going to see is science fiction. Everything is real, right? So let me first start with explaining why we lost that Chinese model. If I send a package from Brussels to Barcelona, I go to the FedEx or UPS website, or you go to the bpost or the Zalando website, and you can trace your package every 5 minutes, right? Which you find normal. My average patient, a cancer patient, an Alzheimer patient, a diabetes patient, is 8,750 hours a year by himself or herself, not connected to the healthcare system. So a FedEx package is better off than my patient. That's not normal. And that is why we don't have healthcare. A doctor knows nothing about you. We're going to use technology to enter into the world of our patients, maybe once 24/7, so that I see what is happening, that I see that something is going offline, and that I can act like the Chinese doctor who also was with me 24/7 in my village and said, Koen, something is bothering you. We're going to solve that now, not in next month, now. Right? That's what we're going to build. Now, in order to do that, I'll introduce 3 guardian angels. Pieces of technology, right? Which will be initially visible, thereafter invisible, which will start to watch me, take care for me, and indeed be the replacements of these real 24/7 doctors. And the first I'm going to start with is this one. Again, I cannot see a reply, but did someone ever see the picture here at the left? It's a hard disk. IBM 1954. The hard disk needed to be transported with a plane. The hard disk in your smartphone is 10 billion times smaller, cheaper, more powerful, right? Until a few years ago, the fastest technological development ever made by man was our ability to increase computer power every 18 months with 100%. No longer so. The biggest technological endeavor made by man is our ability to identify the genetic code, the DNA, the genome, which makes us unique, and which we kind of deciphered for the first time in 2003 for $3 billion, 10 years time. Now we can do that in less than 3 hours for 500 euros with this device, which you see here at the right. So the question is not when will you have your code, who will pay for it, but how will we start to make use of that? How will we enter that into clinical practice? That by itself needs a number of really novel kind of jobs, novel kind of people, which we hardly have at hand. Let me try to illustrate. A few years ago, the state of Hawaii was suing 2 of the biggest pharma companies because 2 pharma companies brought a drug, a blood thinner, which reduces basically the viscosity of my blood, to the state of Hawaii, just like they do in the rest of North America. But people in Hawaii, they have a DNA code which contains 3 digits, which makes them metabolize that compounds faster. They need more drug, right? And nevertheless, they got the same kind of prescription. Based on the genetic code, they made the companies change the prescription. Imagine that you start to do that now. If I have you in my ER and basically I don't know your genetic code, there's 6% chance that you don't leave my ER alive because I give you too much or too little. That is what is called personalized medicine, and for which we now have one of these solutions. These are the first drugs which come out of the 3D printer and which are printed, and the concentration is based on my genome, based on my DNA, and is basically adapted to the fact that I need more and you need less. When I showed this for the first time to pharmacies, well, this was a real unknown, because this is how you will have to start dealing with the fact that we're all different. And I still hear you think, well, Mr. Kas, you're not making your points. Because this is still Sickcare, right? So let's really end healthcare now. And I realize I haven't told a lot yet. But imagine I would ask you, are you willing to know your genetic codes? If I ask my students, 22 years old, 1 in 5 says yes, and 4 in 5 says no. And you know why they say no? Angelina. Angelina lost her mom to ovarian cancer, did a very tiny analysis of her DNA, was predisposed to get breast or ovarian cancer, and said, I will remove my 2 breasts. I mean, that's never ever easy to decide to do, right? Never ever. But if I show you this is the first bra, which is in clinical development, which is a bra which contains at the inside of the cup a sensor. And that sensor sticks to, well, Angelina's breasts, and only if a tumor starts to grow, the bra measures that and gives a warning sign. Maybe it never happens. Luckily, I have my 2 breasts. And if it happens, maybe I'm 55 already. Kids are out of the house, and the decision is easier to bear, right? If I show this to my students, 1 in 5 becomes 4 in 5, because the genetic test doesn't, well, give me kind of an end-of-life decision to make, right? Same for men, by the way. If I ask men, can I look to the chance that you get colon cancer? The majority of men say no, because this is what you put in the back of my body, a tube. We no longer do that. Now we have these tiny pills. They contain a 360 camera. I swallow the camera, it swims to my intestines, makes better pictures than I've ever seen before, and makes that 1 in 5 men becomes 3 in 5. And I have a chance to predict and prevent colon cancer in a much easier fashion, right? So technology changes behavior. But this is the next step. And this is where, again, Kelly comes in place. Because I cannot predict Alzheimer's yet. Well, there's one genetic component out of 3 billion which gives me a pretty high chance to get Alzheimer's. To be honest, if I look to my genome, of course I know mine, that's my job, my heartbeat was, I think, 200. When I was gonna look to my code to say, well, yes, Mr. Kas, you have a higher chance to get Alzheimer's. But mentally, I had already made the decision that if it occurs, then I'm gonna train my brain. I can train my brain doing more Sudokus. For instance, you can train your brain by learning 4 to 6 mobile numbers by heart. The majority of people, maybe not you, they know only 2 or 3 mobile numbers by heart. Do me a favor. Try to learn 4 or 6 by heart, and you have made your brain younger, really. That easy it can be. But imagine that I would not have been able to deal with that. How do you find out? That is why I need novel jobs, genetic counselors, people who learn and find out whether I'm able to deal with the message, whether you are able but you don't want to know, and someone else even doesn't want to know that you can know, right? That is psychology. That's different than just doing a test. That is being human. And that brings me to this point. Very often in selection, people have something like, you have to be perfect. Please forget perfect. The Israeli army is looking to people with autism, with ADHD, and to people who are colorblind. Because if I'm colorblind, I'm better to see camouflaged people. Microsoft is looking to people with autism because I can concentrate on being a software geek. So having a feature can become an opportunity to be good at it, right? But let me bring that bit closer to you. And it's a question I often get. The last few years in this country, in Belgium, we lost 3 soccer players from the Belgium B team, 17, 21 and 23, because their heart stopped beating while they were playing soccer. It's absolutely scandalous that still happens because we know which genetic predisposition leads to that. So do we then have to tell these guys, you have to stop playing sports? No. We can simply implant a small defibrillator, and when my heart stops beating, the machine goes on and life goes on. What do you like? Losing your child 18 years old, or spending €500 to find out that there is an issue and to predict and prevent? I think it's the second, right? And that is why you have to start paying attention to this kind of world of digital things. This is one of the first things I used, the one you see at the bottom. In the past, when I went to a cardiologist, he sent me home with an appointment the 1st of December. Since last year, I was sent home with a casket around my smartphone on which I put my fingers for 2 seconds. It measures my complete heart function, stores that in the cloud, compares against baseline, and when something was not good of baseline, the nurse called me and said, Koen, it's time to come to the doctor. Not the 1st of December. I want to see you next week. We're going to tweak something. Which doctor do you like? The second, right? And so now we have these watches, like the Apple Watch, which is able to measure at least one heart disease, no longer in the hospital once, when too late, but 24/7, because I'm always wearing this kind of watch. And I hear you think, well, we're not there yet. Not everybody's wearing watches, right? But then you have companies like FibriCheck here in Belgium, which made an app, I guess the majority of you have seen it already, which simply makes use of the flashlight of your smartphone, like this. Let me show this. To basically shine through your finger and to measure the variation of your heart rate, which makes the color of your fingertip different, which my eye cannot see, but my smartphone can, and uses that as a diagnostic tool to get a heart disease diagnosed and prevented. Partino is the first to reimburse that. This is Belgian developed inside, approved worldwide, part of the Fitbit family, and basically required not just life science people, well, a different type of life science people and engineers. And per extension, every measurement your doctor has ever performed on you, you will be able to perform now yourself, if you like, at home with your smartphone. Even the pap smear, het uitstrijkje, or an eye scan, or an ear scan, believe me, everything as good as a doctor. And this is, for instance, a patch which measures my blood pressure. No cuff, nothing invasive. It sits there and it measures my blood pressure on a distance. This is my first shirt, which measures my brainwave by simply measuring a combination of conductance and heart rate, and is being used to manage epilepsy patients by measuring a number of parameters from the body. Or this one. When I look to my genome, I turn out to have a mutation which will get me blind. I don't know when, but it might happen. And the only thing I can do now is add a supplement to my diet. Knowing that gives me the feeling that I got stronger, because I can anticipate based on my genetic code and simply play with adding one part to what I eat. But it got more exciting when a few years ago, the first app came to the market, which allows me to now scan my eye myself, and I can look to worsening of the eye. I don't have to go to an ophthalmologist, I can do that myself. And if blindness might kick in, I'm in time to be using the drugs which are currently out there and only work when they can be given early enough. And so all of a sudden, the combination of biology, a sensor, and a smart tool, a smart algorithm, allows me to start basically feeling taken care for. And if it happens that I get blind, I have Be My Eyes. Fantastic app. Was launched 2 years ago. That's an app for blind people, or people who don't see well. And if I don't see well, I walk somewhere, I point my smartphone to what I don't see, and this app made an ecosystem, a network, where on average every blind person has 20 people who are willing to help when you ask him, what do you not see? What do you see? So I send what I don't see via my smartphone to my friend, and he says, Koen, go to the left, you see this there. It builds an ecosystem of patients, connects me by a super simple, smart digital tool. Or this one. This is what I gave to my mother, 85 years old. It's a wearable, and basically it counts the time she needs to go from bedroom to bathroom to living room, which is synced. She does that each day, same time. And I don't need to know where she goes, when she goes. I don't need to know how many steps she takes. But if it takes 20% more time in July than it took in June to go from A to B to C, it's probably because she gets shortness of breath, because liquid starts to fill her lungs. And that's the first indicator for heart failure that I want to know. That bracelet predicts my mother from getting heart failure. And she feels that something is basically watching her, keeping her safe. And so to be able to provide people like here in the audience an overview of what is out there, a year and a half ago we launched a website, which you can see here. You can simply click on the QR code. And this is the site which contains every certified digital health tool. Not 150,000 like in the Apple Store or in the Google Store, only 203 so far. 203 which you can trust, which the healthcare system trusts to be used. And even these are novel to the majority of people. Even this is novel to my hospital, to my doctor. But this is a start to show people the unknown and to make them acquainted and start playing with that. And that's also part of the list. A small patch which I can stick to my baby, and I can measure 24/7 his temperature without having to go to the cradle. I can measure and watch him, well, see increasing or not increasing based on fever. Or this one. If you have someone in the family with headaches, with migraine, prescribe him this one. It's for free. It's Migraine Buddy. And Migraine Buddy allows you, when you start to feel the pain, to press on the screen where the pain starts. It starts here, this part of my head. It captures how much you exercise, or your Fitbit captures that. You tell what you have been eating or drinking, 5 coffees, 2 kinds of cheese, whatever. You decide what you do, what you tell. But after 2 weeks, this app told me, Koen, your headaches always start on Monday. When you come back from London on Friday, sleep longer than 8 o'clock on Saturday, forget to drink 2 liters of water on Sunday, and drink more than 6 coffees on Monday. No one ever told me that. In 2 weeks, the app had it right, based on a simple algorithm and data I gave myself. That is where we start to see that we can become better doctors, because we can start to ask things. We have data now that we can interrogate patients, not with text, not with voice, but simply with emoticons. I ask you something, and on your smartphone, you just reply with an emoticon. That is, for me, enough, not to be 24/7 with you, but to feel that you're improving, that you get better, that you get through your depression, that you get, and so on and so on. So a simple emoticon, a design tool, starts to become part of my doctor's armamentarium, right? But how is it really going to look? Well, I think this is what we really are going to head for. A few years ago, we sent 6,000 people with diabetes home with a step count. A super simple step count, like a Fitbit or a Garmin or whatever. And we split the 6,000 in 2 teams, 3,000, 3,000, and proved that the people who did an extra 2,000 steps a day, 2 years later, they didn't get more sick, it didn't worsen, it got better. Not because of the drugs, but because of exercise, how basic can it be. That was the first proof that motivating people to exercise more made them healthier. And I hear you think, sure, we know. But how do we implement that? Well, this is option 1. This is Pavlov. And Pavlov gives me an electric shock if I not move enough. That's maybe over the top. But in times of 50 Shades of Grey, there seems to be a market for that. Right? This is better. This is the Alpha Bank in Russia. Already present in Holland as well. The Alpha Bank gives me a higher interest on my bank account if I run 10,000 steps a day. Altruism? No way. The bank knows that I live longer and remain customer for longer if I remain healthy. So they become part of my healthcare, a bank, right? Or look to this one. In Dubai, I get 1 gram of gold, real gold, for every 2 kilograms I lose via exercise. Because I'm way too expensive, I get diabetes. If you get me under control, I start to earn money, remaining healthy. This was initially a joke at the Olympics in Sochi. This is a vending machine in the metro, in the underground. And only when I can weather to my knees for 30 times within 2 minutes, I got a free ticket, a free ride after spending basically 30 Bentus. This is Mexico, 2019. Well, they started 2018. In every metro station in Mexico, they're installing the same machines. You drive for free if you first move. So the country starts to keep me healthy. And this is a really cool one. Soon available in Belgium as well. This is Netflix. Netflix allows you to program the favorite character from your favorite Netflix series as a coach on your smartphone, and you can only watch the next episodes of your favorite series if you first move. Hilarious laughing, because I can have an experience you didn't have simply by remaining more healthy. And that kind of idea allows you to start, well, making healthcare really fun. In the US, we have the first schools which make it mandatory that you count your steps, because a healthy mind in a healthy body. So you have to show that you can deal with health. Yeah? And now I hear you think, yeah, but way too simple. Because health is way more than making steps, right? Sure. Health is also what I eat. This is Nestle in Japan. Nestle in Japan allows me to make a picture of what I eat, and based on what I eat, they recommend me which vitamin or supplement to take on top to maximize the chance that I eat properly well. Yeah? Or this one, fascinating. One of the papers I once wrote with a number of colleagues was looking to the best diet we can give to people with encountered cancer and to make sure that they have a long-lasting life afterwards. And we were writing that paper somewhere in Alba in Piemonte in the north of Italy, and this paper came out. This picture came out. This picture of North America, where every McDonald's is a flashlight. It's full of flashlights. And my Italian colleague said, that's interesting. Because 9 years ago, in the entire northern Italian region, there was only one McDonald's in Padua. So how do I prove that I keep you healthy? Because I give you the right diet, or because I do not send you to McDonald's? And that is why I need big data. That is why I need to be able to connect something to make better use of who you are. This is a new tool which looks to how my wrist moves. And by simply measuring one data point from a watch, that thing can tell you that I'm drinking tea now, that I'm drinking an espresso now, and a coffee is like this. Depending on what I drink, I move my wrist differently. You know which company bought this? Medtronic. Medtronic is a company which aims to make sure that diabetes is managed. So they bought a company which is using a digital tool to measure what I eat, so they can start to recommend better how I change my behavior to make sure that I do not need pills, not machines, but basically just lifestyle. And so this way we start to see that we realize that becoming coaches, being able to use digital to start teaching and learning people novel jobs becomes relevant. While Corbett is a school where AI learns me data science, we now start to need new people, new jobs, because we see that we can manage behavior of people, but for a majority of diseases, people don't want to have a computer. They want to have a human voice. They want to have someone who is digitally enabled and really gets me the extra mile to use digital to change behavior in a long-lasting fashion. But not always. A number of things people don't like to talk about. That's emotion. Hard. Very hard. This is an app which allows me to talk to an app, and it tells me pretty scary in which emotional state I am. So this is something which can anticipate that I feel lonely. And bear with me, the biggest epidemic coming to mankind is no longer diabetes, but it's feeling lonely. And it's especially hitting people in between 19 and 27 years old, which are fantastic in keeping up appearances with their social network, on Instagram and Facebook, but they have a hard time to explain that they don't feel. And even that we can use to the better. This is a tool from Instagram. For the people who use that, Instagram allows me to send a picture. And before I send the picture, I add a color layer on top of that. We have data now from people who use orange and reddish filters, switch to the use of bluish and gray within a month, and 1 month later are depressed. So my social behavior, my voice, my number of errors I type, whatever you can imagine, I can start to use as a real-world data point to get to know my patient better, but also to help him better. And this is something I would recommend you to download as well. This is my Psy. I mentioned sometimes I feel suicidal, for instance. I don't even like to tell my wife. But I like and able to tell my Psy companion. This is Wubot. And Wubot is trained as a real psychologist. Knows and gets to know me much better and gets me through hard things and sometimes sends me to a real doctor. I feel his presence 24/7 makes me stronger, makes to give me the feeling that I'm fine. And sometimes what he does, he sends me to a museum because it's not pills in the future. It's not something I have to solve by others. Sometimes I get relaxed by simply going and watch art. That simple it can be to keep me healthy. And then here a number of you think and say, well, yeah, sure, but all that digital, that smartphone thing, well, how bad is that? I have an addiction to smartphone. Well, solution, this is a nice solution. This comes from a Dutch designer who made tablecloths for in a restaurant, and you first have to put your smartphone into the side pockets before you even get the menu. to get look at, to make sure that I become more human. I don't want to pay the people, the families sitting in a restaurant, which do not communicate with each other, but which kind of communicate with a smartphone. Yeah? The other kinds of things we have to solve. If indeed the world becomes able to be online, to be able to collect data, fantastic. To anticipate things, fantastic. And to generate the light. That all sounds fantastic, because anticipating disease allows me to prevent it and get it out of the way. But how will we deal with this? With privacy, with ethics and morality? Can I still have a cradle with a baby, which is handicapped, without someone saying, well, Koen, you should have known this? How are we going to deal with, well, my data? And I think we will be able to handle that pretty well. And the example is this one, Disneyland. Who of you would be willing to tell me where he or she will be at 3 o'clock on Saturday? Again, I cannot see you. That's the only disadvantage. But I think half of you are not willing to tell me. Why should I know, right? Well, if I go to Disneyland, I get a box sent home with these kind of wearables. A band with my name, the name of my partner, the name of my kids. I start wearing the band, I enter the park, and I get in for free. Nothing special. That's what happens at Tomorrowland, or that happened at the festival in the past as well. But you know what I hate when I go to Disneyland? That is waiting 45 minutes in time in line before Space Mountain. I don't like that. But 2 minutes before 3 o'clock, that band tells me, Koen, if you leave now from where you are in the park to Avalanche or to Space Mountain, which no longer exists, there is no traffic, there is no line. I am willing to give up my location on a square meter at 3 o'clock to get a service in return, right? That's the service. But the experience which really made it was the following. When we came to the park, my wife got flowers. It was her birthday. How did Disney know it's her birthday? Was it a problem not getting flowers? No. But when I did the application, I filled in the forms, I filled in her birthday. The flowers I will never forget. Is Disney selling flowers, making them? No. They made a service deal with a company in the neighborhood who sell flowers. The flowers are the delight. So my question to you, what is it that you can give to me on top so that I am able to give you my data in return to a better service, which gives me an experience, a better one than I would ever get before? So that I can move away from this slide, and that's my current doctor, who tells me, Koen, you have to put your cream on your arm to treat your rash, to become this doctor, who said, Koen, you have been walking with your dog in a forest in Halle, where the flowers are blossoming, and you're allergic to the seeds of these flowers. Your dog is full of seeds of flowers. Please wash your dog. That is the future of healthcare. The doctor who is digitally enabled to prevent and predict things from happening and giving me a better life. And that brings me to my last point. The most important thing in the entire innovative landscape in healthcare, in life sciences and beyond, is this word, is trust. And trust is what you need to change the world. If I do not trust you, it stops. If you don't trust me, it stops. If you trust me, we can build something together. For instance, this guy is going to sleep in my bed tonight. He has the key of my apartment. He uses Airbnb. That's based on trust, right? And that is Airbnb. I hope you have already used that. This is the website from Airbnb. For instance, I think it's Bruges. This is the price of different apartments in Bruges. This is how they look from the inside. That's the average price. And by a few clicks, I can book a real apartment, basically, on a website. Airbnb has no houses, has no apartments, has no bricks. They have nothing. They have a digital tool, right? This is San Francisco. Blue are hotels in San Francisco. Red, yes, are Airbnbs in San Francisco. Blue is your hospital. Red is your primary doctor. I don't have to explain. Again, I think how connecting via a digital network, in this case, brought hospitality to an entire city, and how we're going to see that happen with healthcare as well. Healthcare will come home, really close to your home, always on and accessible. And this is where I'm going to end. This is the city where I live. You can tell from my beautiful A that I live in the center of the world, in Antwerp. In Antwerp, we have a project where we do monitor, in a small part of the city, a lot of things. We monitor the amount of rainfall, the amount of planes crossing the skies, the wind turbines which are on, which people not which, how many people cross red light, orange light, and so on. So these data we know. This is my health. In Belgium, it's kind of weird, but all my sick data are in a kind of basket. It's called Mijn Gezondheid, Mooie Santé. This is my genome. This is my brain. This is my voice. This is my social media profile. All these data, they define who I am, who Koen Kas is. So what? Well, in 2020, when you think about making something novel, a new car, you don't make that. This is an example of, for instance, a car which is made, which is made yesterday. And that car has so many sensors which have been used to make the car that I can make a digital copy of the car first. It's called a digital twin. And if I have a new idea to make the car better, I first have to prove on the computer, on the digital copy, that I can make the car more speedy by changing the wheel. And only then I get the money, the resources, the people to build that in real life, right? I think you can already predict what my next slide is going to show. The combination of the last two. In 2020, now, for the first time, we are able to start envisioning a digital copy of a human being. An avatar of ourselves, which basically contains the data we produce, the data we are, so that you don't have to bother me, but you can play with my avatar to keep me healthy. And I hear you think, no, that's science fiction. That's not what we're going to do. Well, in Europe we have one problem. We are not aspirational enough. And the European Commission has realized that. And they have launched a kind of grants, big grants, flagships, over $1 billion, to make us more ambitious. And I have the honor to guide one of these projects, EU, where we managed to bring 57 labs from 20 countries together against one vision, trying to build by 2030 a European Commission, a Commission community, where every European has an avatar, a digital tool, which is able to predict the 5 most common chronic diseases. And I don't know whether we're going to succeed, but the fact that we can make the ambition and the aspiration to get there gives me the hope that we start to get closer to this movie. I started with the movie, I'm going to end with the movie. This is Big Hero 6. If you haven't seen that one, download it in the weekend. Big Hero 6 is about 5 friends which get to know a 6th one, a big inflatable marshmallow doctor, Baymax, who, well, lives in my house, sits in the tiny box, and sometimes appears, and basically makes use of all the things I have told. Genomics, sensors, big data, which makes machines smarter, all in the background, but basically with one ambition, to change my behavior and to give me an experience I never got before, to create healthcare by delight. And this way, I'm going to send you home. I'm going to ask, after today, what is it that you are going to do in your job, in your life science company, to do more than your customer, your patient expects from you, to use an unknown, and to create an everlasting experience. What will you do to create delight tomorrow? Thank you very much.